In February of 2014, 5 Finnish divers cut open a hole on top of a frozen lake in Norway. They slipped through the ice and descended 400 feet down into the narrow, dark passage of an underwater cave. They would have never predicted the life-threatening ordeal that was about to unravel in the depths. A chain of unforeseen events forced these divers to make heart-wrenching decisions in a desperate bid for survival. In the end, 2 divers were left for dead. These are the final moments of the Plura Cave Disaster. Beneath the rugged terrain of Norway's Plura Valley lies one of Europe's largest submerged caves. It had only been explored since the early 90s due to past equipment limitations. But by 2014, technology had advanced enough for divers to venture deeper into this mysterious cave system. 5 highly experienced Finnish divers, led by Kai Kinkanen, geared up for an exhibition into the Plura Cave complex. The team included Patrick, a 42-year-old fireman, Jari H., a 40-year-old product manager, Vesa, a 33-year-old electrical designer, and Jari U, a 34-year-old mechanical engineer, all certified and experienced in technical cave diving. On February 5, 2014, after carefully loading and reviewing their equipment, they split into 2 groups to tackle the cave with a strategic 2-hour interval. This plan aimed to clear the water of sediments stirred up by the first group and allowed for potential rescue support if needed. The dive was meticulously planned, with Patrick and Jari H entering first, followed by Kai, Vesa, and Jari U a couple hours later, all hoping to navigate the cave swiftly and safely. On the day of the expedition, tension was palpable among the Finnish divers at Norway's icy Plura Lake. Vesa and Jari U finalized their gear, while Patrick and Jari H revved up a chainsaw, slicing through the thick ice to reveal crystal-clear waters below. They could see the rocky lake bottom, some 60 feet down, an encouraging start. The group's spirits were particularly high that day, buoyed by ideal diving conditions and a well-rested night. Patrick took out a camera and filmed their final preparations. "Shall we proceed?" he asked, securing his dry suit. Jari's gesture towards the icy waters below was all the confirmation they needed. With a firm nod, the 2 divers started their underwater scooters and descended into the icy depths. The team employed advanced closed-circuit rebreathers, a system that recycles exhaled gases and enriches them with a life-sustaining mix of oxygen, nitrogen, and helium, known as trimix. But this high-tech gear, while capable of extending duration underwater, also posed grave risks. Hypercapnia, a dangerous buildup of carbon dioxide due to equipment malfunction, could disorient a diver, leading to potentially fatal mistakes. Aware of the potential dangers, Patrick and Jari H carried spare units and extra cylinders, leaving nothing to chance. The 2 navigated deeper, past a 1,600-foot descent into an expansive water-filled chamber, the cave's beauty a stark contrast to its lurking dangers. Here, at nearly 420 feet deep, surrounded by craggy limestone, the real test began. Now fully immersed and driven by adrenaline, it was time to venture into the deepest section of the cave. Once arrived, the 2 divers attached their guidelines to a plate previously set by Kai and Sammy. As they neared the exit, less than 330 feet away, Patrick and Jari caught a glimpse of what seemed like light at the end of the tunnel. However, a challenging narrow section with a tight 90-degree turn lay ahead. Patrick led the way, but lost sight of Jari's light as he rounded the corner. Concerned, he circled back to ensure Jari was still close. Although they re-established eye contact, Patrick noticed Jari's headlamp flickering erratically, an unmistakable distress signal among divers. Urgently, Patrick motioned for Jari to move closer, but when there was no response, he approached Jari, who then asked him to clear his path by moving his scooter and spare cylinder. After moving his scooter 30 feet up the passage, Patrick saw that Jari's scooter cord was jammed between rocks. However, Jari managed to free himself in a desperate struggle. He then gestured towards his backup tank, prompting Patrick to hand him the regulator multiple times until Jari reverted to using his own rebreather. Suddenly, Jari's regulator fell out. In a quick move, Patrick offered his own and activated the purge button, but in his panicked state, Jari inhaled too quickly, swallowing a massive gulp of freezing water. Seeing Jari's pained grimace, Patrick realized the gravity of the situation. With no immediate rescue possible and facing a perilous ascent himself, he checked his dive computer. It showed a staggering 400-minute ascent time, a drastic increase from the initial 120 minutes calculated. Every minute below 360 feet meant adding an extra 10 minutes to their dive time due to necessary decompression stops. Patrick knew they had overstayed in the depths, making their situation increasingly dangerous with each passing second. With Jari incapacitated and his path blocked, Patrick made the heart-wrenching decision to continue on by himself. He began the slow swim to the entrance, weighed down by the likelihood that the second group would find Jari's body blocking their path to the exit. As Patrick made his ascent, his mind was torn between hope for his survival and the bleak task that might await him, that is, returning alone to inform the families of the dreadful outcome. At approximately 2 p.m., Vesa and Jari Yu cautiously lowered themselves through the ice hole, beginning their descent toward the cave's remote entrance. Kai chose to stay in the back, ensuring he was positioned to assist should any complications arise. They progressed swiftly, reaching the expansive air-filled chamber in just 20 minutes. With the help of the earlier divers' strategically placed bailout cylinders, the 3 divers estimated that the remainder of the journey could be completed in about 4 hours. However, the journey soon grew more arduous. Against the advice of the others, Vesa had insisted on carrying extra backup cylinders, and, as you'll soon see, this would become a fatal error. Now arriving at a depth of 410 feet, the cylinders hindered Vesa's movement through the narrow confines of the passage. To make matters worse, one of Vesa's fins got caught in a guideline. The delay not only frustrated the team, but added nearly an hour to their dive time, requiring additional decompression stops and extending their exposure to the frigid waters. Their resolve was tested further when, just as they started moving again, a distress beep echoed through the watery confines from a nearby diver's apparatus. The chilling sound led them to a horrifying discovery. Jari H's lifeless body was wedged awkwardly in a 90-degree bend of the cave, obstructing their path. The grim scene shocked the divers, and Kai, affected by nitrogen narcosis, struggled with impaired judgment and motor skills. Amidst the confusion, Kai observed Jari Yu's peculiar behavior as he was switching inconsistently between his closed-circuit and open-circuit systems. This erratic action was soon followed by Jari Yu becoming limp and unresponsive. Faced with a rapidly deteriorating situation, Kai was forced to make a critical decision. With the passage blocked and their safety in jeopardy, he shouted for everyone to turn back. Vesa, however, driven by sheer panic and a rapidly depleting oxygen supply, made a desperate decision to continue forward. He feared that turning back would not leave him with enough air to survive. Kai, realizing the direness of the situation, reluctantly decided to save himself by beginning his ascent back to the entrance, leaving behind the grim fate of his companions. Kai's ascent was fraught with challenges. The first decompression stop at 330 feet was just the beginning of what would be a grueling series of pauses necessary to avoid decompression sickness. Unsure if his oxygen supply would last through the over 400-minute journey to the surface, Kai weighed the risks of pushing on against the potential of a painful death by drowning. Meanwhile, Patrick, on the other side of the cave, faced similar dilemmas. The dwindling battery power of his equipment forced him to choose between using his thermal vest for warmth or his scooter for mobility. Choosing movement to preserve his energy, he would kick his feet to ward off the cold during his decompression stops. Vesa, enduring his ascent just behind Patrick, was tormented by guilt for not being able to assist his stricken friends. The emotional burden, combined with the physical demands of the ascent, pushed him to his limits. When Kai finally reached the longer, air-filled chamber, he contemplated waiting there for rescue, hoping the stored oxygen might sustain him until help arrived. However, with no certainty of a rescue mission and the potential of his friends not making it out alive, he pressed on, navigating the last leg of his escape manually after his underwater scooter failed. As the three men made their decompression stops, they were unaware that the others were also fighting their way to the surface. Hope dwindled as their ordeal seemed endless. Just 6 hours from safety, Kai was forced to use his final air cylinder. Nearby, Patrick and Vesa were also running low on oxygen and could no longer complete the necessary decompression stops. Nonetheless, Patrick surfaced around 9 p.m., a grueling 8.5 hours later, but an hour and a half sooner than required. Patrick was completely exhausted, but waited near the cave entrance, hoping Vesa was still on his way. As he was rummaging through backpacks for food and drink, he finally saw Vesa's headlamp piercing the darkness. 3 hours later, Kai also emerged, swimming to the icy surface by 1 a.m. His dive had extended to an incredible 11.5 hours. With no sign of the others, and fearing the worst, Kai stumbled to the van, turned on the engine and lights, and collapsed from exhaustion. Meanwhile, after changing and warming up, Patrick and Vesa returned to the dive site. When they noticed the van's engine running, they hurried through the cold, dark night and found Kai shivering inside, overwhelmed and assuming he was the sole survivor. The ordeal led to immediate hospitalization for Kai, Patrick, and Vesa. Following a lengthy hospital stay, Vesa struggled with mobility and unexplained tingling sensations, while Kai was severely affected by anxiety, bearing the scars of their harrowing experience. After the tragedy at the cave was quickly spread, authorities hoped it would deter others from attempting the dangerous traverse between the cave openings. Despite this, Patrick, learning that the bodies of the deceased divers wouldn't be recovered, quietly reached out to his diving friends for help. The group of Finnish divers convened secretly at the cave entrance on March 26th, aiming to keep the illegal recovery operation discreet to avoid intervention from local authorities. This time, they were well prepared. The team entered the cave from both ends, strategically placing over 24 bailout cylinders along the route to ensure safety. In the end, Patrick and a diver named Sammy successfully recovered the bodies, with Vesa providing support from above. Incredibly, shortly after this intense recovery operation, Kai, Patrick, and Vesa were already gearing up for their next adventure. They loaded their diving equipment into Kai's van, ready to embark on a multi-week diving expedition across France and Spain, demonstrating their unwavering passion for diving despite such a harrowing tragedy.